Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by English Mountain Spring Water. During the cold winter months, your body has a hard time staying hydrated, so drink plenty of English Mountain Spring Water, just as we do on the set and off. Visit English Mountain H2O to learn how to order for your home or office. Man, they can send it in any size, deliver as much and as often as you like. English Mountain Spring Water, I have become a huge fan. All right, kind of a quick segment here to end with, but I'm glad we mentioned him on our Christmas Eve show. We wished a Merry Christmas to Gus Manning. Died at 99 this past week. Haywood Harris, of course, those names always go together. Yep. And the thing I find unusual about that, as I mentioned going to break, most schools, the legendary figures are coaches, players, broadcasters, occasionally an athletic director. Rarely is it a sports information director or an assistant athletic director. Yeah. And I realized that Gus and Haywood had a show that they did on game days for many years, and that certainly played a role in it. And they had funny personalities to listen to. But it is incredibly unique, and I think kind of cool, that the University of Tennessee has two guys like that who anybody 40 and up will remember for a long, long time.
Exactly.
Thoughts on Gus and Haywood?
It was when I first got into sports writing and went over to start covering things at UT when I was at the Maryville Daily Times. It was almost as big a deal, and this was in the 80s, to be around Gus or Haywood as it was to be around Coach Majors. That's what kind of guys they were. And I enjoyed, sitting there talking many times, talking to Haywood Harris, and he was always funny. Gus, I thought Gus was the more businesslike out of the two.
Right down to that famous shot of him in the end zone celebrating the Clemson win where he's got his briefcase.
Yeah.
And cigar in the mouth and briefcase as he's celebrating.
So many stories. I mean, going back to General Nealon and Bear Bryant, I mean, he could tell you all of those and the transition all this time. We were lucky enough, Josh, Jimmy, myself, our seats for 99.1 The Sports Animal right next to Gus's for years, including Jimmy right next to him. They had a great relationship. And they even saved a seat even after in the years that he wasn't able to go. And then the list of things that his job duties, it's like 22 of them. And then the last one was like, and anything else necessary.
Well, I mean, he attended 608 consecutive games.
Amazing.
And how was the streak broken? He broke his ankle.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like on the sidewalk in front of his house. It started in 1946 with the season opener. So they were always there, and you could always talk to them. And
their locker room show.
Right.
You didn't have a bunch of radio shows back in the 70s and 60s.
Oh, it was just game day. Yeah, just during football season.
You just did not have
no sports talk radio.
So you kind of got to know them a little bit earlier than you did a lot of other people.
And who had a greater voice than Haywood?
Yeah.
I mean, that was just like the best voice ever.
Great chemistry.
Haywood still had the greatest line ever uttered on this show, maybe better than I took Nebraska. Years ago, we had Haywood on, and I'd said something about funerals. And then we went into the introductions, and we get around to Haywood. And before I could say, welcome him in, he says, and speaking of funerals, it was tremendous. Those two, you're right. When I first got over on campus, I went over looking for an SID type position. And I had a connection to Coach Majors, so I went to Majors, and he said, absolutely, walk with me. And he takes me down to Haywood's office, and you meet Haywood and Gus, and it's like, I've heard you guys on the radio. And they were very, very friendly, just super nice guys. It's interesting, in terms of off-field people over there, Gus Manning, Haywood Harris, John Ward, it's hard to think. I mean, Lindsey Nelson is so far in the past and was such a short run.
Bobby Denton, PA.
Okay, well, there's one that could be up there with Bobby Denton, and of course his involvement with the radio stuff.
But that's like a Mount Rushmore, right? We talked about that.
Yeah, you actually have kind of a Mount Rushmore of people who weren't players, coaches, which is unusual.
You take away, just keep it with the coaches. You take away maybe 4 coaches, and those guys were as well known as any of the other coaches you've had over there.
Well, they outlasted
right.
coaches and ADs.
I mean,
Bob Woodruff was when I was growing up, he was a legendary figure. Gus and Haywood have a longer legacy. Doug Dickey, Gus and Haywood have a longer legacy. So That's quite a loss.
Well,
in
even
terms
John
of,
Ward, they predated John Ward.
Yeah, the document the Vol Network shared of all the roles that Gus Manning had that was signed by Robert Nealon, if you look at all that he did, and then think about the amount of people that are required to handle all of those roles now, is a reminder of what Gus Manning did for Tennessee, and then the connection with Haywood and the personality they shared, plus how much they cared about the University of Tennessee. That's a big part of it. The people behind the scenes, how much they care about UT to make it what it is for the fans.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Great loss this week with the loss of Gus Manning, as it was a few years ago with the loss of Haywood Harris. Two names that are just, always going to be tied together and remembered by Vol fans. All right, thanks to Vince, Chuck, Josh, Bob, Mark, who left a little earlier, and thanks to you for watching. Thanks to our sponsors. We'll see you right back here next week on The Sports Source.